She screamed once, then the porch filled with smoke. By the time I hit the front steps, heat shimmered across the railings, the welcome mat was smoldering, and my little girl was coughing in the doorway, hair singed, eyes streaming. And there, standing at the curb with a lighter still warm in her palm, was Karen, the HOA president who's turned our neighborhood into her personal kingdom. She didn't know our security camera caught everything. She didn't know 3 minutes later she'd be in handcuffs. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments, Dallas, Phoenix, Boston. Let me see you. And if you believe no child should ever be hurt, so someone can enforce the rules, hit subscribe right now. All right, deep breath. Here's exactly how it happened. We moved to Cedar Ridge for quiet front porches, basketball hoops, and Saturday lemonade stands. My daughter, Maya, is 11, book-smart, soft-spoken, the kind of kid who apologizes when the rain ruins your picnic. Her safe place was the swing I bolted to the front beam, a therapist-approved comfort routine that helps with her anxiety. It never bothered anyone except one person. The letters started mild. Please remove personal fixtures from visible frontage, HOA Bylaw 4.2. Then they turned sharp, final notice. Noncompliance fees accrue daily. Every note had the same signature. Karen Abbott, HOA president, blue ink, big loops, the confidence of someone who never expects to be told no. That afternoon, I was in the kitchen prepping dinner while Maya read on the porch. A sudden chemical smell cut through the house, sweet wrong, like plastic near a candle. I looked up. Thin gray smoke curled past the screen. I reached the door as Maya stumbled in, coughing. The porch mat was smoldering, heat licking the beam beneath the swing bracket. I grabbed the extinguisher, pressed, and watched the foam blanket out the glow. In the street, Karen, phone up, filming, voice flat, documenting a safety violation. Safety. I said, eyes stinging. You lit my porch. She tilted her head. I warned you about hazards. Some people only learn when they feel consequences. I stepped toward the curb. She took a single backward step, then froze as the cruiser turned onto our block, lights off, rolling quiet. My neighbor across the street had called 911 the second he saw smoke. Another neighbor, Mrs. Ruiz, shouted from her yard. I recorded it. All of it. Karen's eyes flicked from me to the camera, over my door, the tiny black dome she'd mocked at the last HOA meeting. Maya clutched my sleeve. Dad, I'm okay, she whispered, voice rough. She was standing, breathing awake. That was enough to keep the floor under my feet. The officer approached, calm and clipped. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to set the lighter on the hood. Karen laughed, thin, shaky, almost rehearsed. A misunderstanding. He's been defying community standards for months. I was preventing a bigger fire hazard. By starting one, I said. The officer's partner angled to the side, eyeing the charred mat, the foam, the blackened lower beam. He tapped his radio. Dispatch confirm, neighbor video incoming. Mrs. Ruiz raised her phone. Sending now. My door cam had already auto-uploaded to my cloud. Within minutes, the time-stamped clips hit the officer's screen. Karen crouching at the mat, a flick of the lighter, a curl of smoke, her stepping back to film as it spread. Her face drained of color. You can't use that without context. There's plenty of context, I said softly, and there's a child inside this house. 3 minutes after the first officer arrived, Karen's wrists were cuffed. She tried to keep talking, telling the bystanders we'd forced her hand, telling the officers we were endangering property values, telling the clouds God herself would agree with the bylaws. The patrol car door shut. The block went strangely quiet. Now, here's where most people stop the story. Villain arrested, justice served. But if you've ever dealt with someone who hides behind laminated rules, you know the arrest is the start, not the end. While EMTs checked Maya's lungs clear, thank God, and dabbed cooling gel on the reddened skin near her hairline, I walked the perimeter with the fire inspector. He pointed to faint chemical residue in the seams of the mat, accelerant. Not enough to explode, but enough to make smoke billow fast. A scare tactic, a punishment disguised as lesson. I knew then this wasn't a tantrum. This was a campaign. At the last HOA meeting, Karen had floated a porch neutrality amendment: no swings, flags, wind chimes, or other fixtures visible from the street. She'd argued it was about uniformity and safety. I'd argued it was about control. She'd lost the vote barely. She smiled at me on the way out and said, "You'll comply eventually, one way or another." That sentence replayed in my head as the officers finished their reports. "We'll book her for attempted arson and child endangerment," one said. "There may be additional charges from the fire marshal. Is she going home tonight?" I asked. He shook his head. "Unlikely." I nodded, but my hands stayed tight at my sides. Because I've learned, when someone like Karen falls, they don't fall alone, they grab whoever they can reach. And Karen had reach. She ran the board, chaired the safety subcommittee, and spent her mornings coffeeing with 3 other presidents from the HOAs next door. She didn't act on impulse, she built ladders. After the cruisers left, neighbors drifted back to their lives, whispering the new neighborhood legend. I tucked Maya into the couch, made her tea with honey, and took photos of everything: the scorch beam, the residue, the extinguisher tag, the path of the smoke. Documentation is oxygen when people start rewriting the air. That night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A man's voice, low and patient. "We represent the association's legal interests. There's been a misunderstanding. If you remove the porch swing and agree not to press charges, we can settle this neighbor to neighbor." I stared at the dark window where the porch used to glow in the evening. "She lit a fire at my door," I said, "and my daughter was there." A pause. "Then let's avoid escalation." "You called the wrong house," I said and hung up. 2 minutes later, a new text buzzed. No name, blocked ID. "You want this to get ugly? Keep pushing." I screenshotted it, filed it with the rest. I looked at Maya, asleep now, breathing steady, and made a promise out loud. We're not playing defense. In the morning, before the sun crested the roofs, I opened a fresh notebook and started a list: video evidence, door cam plus Mrs. Ruiz's angle. Witnesses: Ruiz, Patel across, Officer Chun, Fire Inspector Lowell. Pattern: prior threats, letters, meeting comments, porch neutrality amendment, civil and criminal, charges filed, restraining order, HOA board investigation. Leverage: insurance, arson voids coverage, sponsors of Karen's committee, bylaws she violated. If you're still with me, here's the part most folks never see. People like Karen rarely act alone. There's always a treasurer who looks away, a board member who doesn't want drama, and a neighbor who benefits from the bullying because their lawn wins Yard of the Month every June. Pull one string, the whole banner comes down. By noon, 3 emails landed from different board members with the same subject line: de-escalation proposal. And by dusk, an anonymous flyer appeared on Nextdoor claiming I'd staged the incident for attention and donations. That's when I knew we were in for a war of stories. Good. I'm a parent, I don't lose those. I posted the time-stamped videos with a simple caption: "This is my child. This is our porch. This is what community standards looked like yesterday." Within an hour, our HOA's private forum crashed under the traffic. Within 2, local reporters were in my driveway. Within 3, an attorney who watches my channel DM'd. "I'll handle the civil side pro bono. Start drafting a victim impact statement. And save everything." And as the sun slid behind the roofs, a patrol car eased to the curb. Officer Chin stepped out, calm, professional. "Quick update," he said. "Booking complete. She's being transferred. And, Mr. Khan, the DA wants to talk. He's seen the footage." "Good," I said, because the footage is just the beginning. The next morning, the world knew. Local channels ran the headline: HOA president arrested in alleged arson attempt. Neighbors who'd spent years smiling politely at Karen now stared at their lawns, pretending not to read. But inside the HOA office, the gears were already turning. When people like Karen fall, their friends don't save them. They hide the evidence. By 9 a.m., every HOA notice board in Cedar Ridge displayed the same statement: the association is aware of an unfortunate incident. We are cooperating with authorities. Please refrain from speculation. Translation: close ranks. I called the precinct for an update. Karen was being held on charges of attempted arson and reckless endangerment. Her attorney was already filing motions for release. She's saying it was a misunderstanding. Officer Chin told me quietly. She claims you staged the scene to smear the HOA. I laughed once, dry. She's doubling down. He sighed. She's not the only one. The HOA board's lawyer called us 30 minutes after her arrest. Someone higher up is pulling strings. That night, while Maya slept, I opened the files I'd copied from the HOA portal before it went offline. Each folder was dated, signed, cross-referenced with invoices. On paper, it was all routine. Landscaping, community events, maintenance. But buried deep in financial _2024 Q3 sat a spreadsheet labeled Safety Enhancements Fund. The numbers didn't add up. Tens of thousands withdrawn for compliance materials, safety demos, training. The vendor name? Abbott Home Solutions, LLC. Karen's last name. I kept scrolling, every payment signed by 2 board members who'd sworn they barely knew her. It wasn't just corruption. It was theft disguised as safety. At dawn, I walked the neighborhood. Most houses had small black boxes fixed under their porch lights. New fire detector sensors installed by the HOA last month. Identical serial numbers. I took photos. Back home, I searched the model online. Nothing. No manufacturer, no retail listing, nothing but a post on a tech forum. Beware fake sensor units contain hidden Wi-Fi transmitters. My stomach dropped. They weren't safety devices, they were surveillance. And Karen wasn't working alone. I reached out to Drew, the HOA treasurer, the only one who'd ever shown discomfort signing her memos. He answered on the first ring, voice trembling. She's not the boss, you know. There's a consultant, someone she reports to. Name? I don't have one. He only ever called himself Mr. Riley. Said he was from Community Integrity Corporation. They sold us the sensors. Do you have emails? I deleted them, but the backups might still be in the board server. Then I'll get them. That night, I met Drew in the clubhouse parking lot. He handed me a thumb drive wrapped in a napkin. Be careful, he said. After you posted the video, 3 board members resigned. The rest went silent. They're scared of whoever's funding this. I plugged the drive into my laptop. Emails flooded the screen. Karen forwarding photos, Riley replying with phrases like data validation, community behavior tracking, and pilot success metrics. It wasn't about porches or bylaws. It was about testing technology, seeing how far they could push ordinary families before someone fought back. Karen had lit that fire believing she was part of a demonstration. She thought she was proving loyalty to a system that was never hers, and someone had promised her protection. The next morning, an envelope sat on my doorstep. Inside, no letter, just a printed photo of me and Maya in our kitchen taken through the window. On the back, stop digging. I called Officer Chin again. He told me Karen had posted bail. 3 minutes later, the HOA forum pinged, a new post by Kay, Abbott. The rumors end now. I'm back, and I will not be intimidated by liars. Underneath, hundreds of comments, neighbors divided, some defending her, others terrified. This wasn't justice yet. It was escalation. I started connecting dots, property tax receipts, contractor payments, delivery records. Each trail pointed to a single warehouse on the edge of town registered to Community Integrity Corporation. The same name from Drew's emails. I sent the data to Chun. 2 hours later, he texted, warehouse flagged. We're getting a warrant. Stay put. But staying put wasn't an option anymore. Because at 3 p.m., Maya's school called. A woman claiming to be her aunt had tried to sign her out. When staff asked for ID, she walked away. Cameras caught only the back of her head, blonde hair, same build as Karen. That evening, as rain blurred the windows, I stood by Maya's bed and promised, this ends with us. And I meant it. Karen wasn't just a neighbor anymore. She was the visible edge of something hidden, organized, and dangerous. Tomorrow I'd walk into that warehouse and find out who Mr. Riley really was. because if they could scare one family into silence, they'd think they could scare a whole town. They were wrong. The next morning, fog lay heavy over the highway, thick enough to swallow headlights, thin enough to feel like warning. Maya was safe with a neighbor. I left before sunrise, the drive feeling longer than it should. The warehouse sat on the far edge of town, an old logistics hub with faded letters that once read Community Integrity Corp. Most of the windows were boarded, but one side door carried a new keypad and a motion sensor blinking faintly red. I parked 2 blocks away, grabbed my camera, and walked the last stretch on foot. A delivery truck idled near the loading dock. 2 men unloaded boxes labeled neighborhood safety kits. Each bore the same serial code as the detectors I'd photographed on our street. I waited until they went inside, then slipped along the outer wall. A side vent had been pried open, maybe by raccoons, maybe by someone before me. Either way, it was my doorway. Inside smelled of dust and printer toner. Rows of metal shelves stretched into the shadows, stacked with sealed cartons. A computer workstation glowed at the far end. I crept closer and glanced at the monitor. A live dashboard flickered across the screen. A grid of dots, each labeled with street names: Cedar Ridge, Maple Heights, Brookview Park. Every dot pulsed like a heartbeat. They were houses. Our houses. The so-called safety sensors weren't just cameras. They were live transmitters sending data to this hub: motion patterns, sound levels, Wi-Fi signals. Someone had turned entire neighborhoods into a living lab. A folder on the desktop caught my eye. Pilot_results on HOA. I clicked. There she was, Karen. Surveillance, stills of her porch, meeting notes, titled Behavior Compliance Demonstration. A memo from Riley praised her initiative and emotional leverage success. My stomach turned. They'd used her temper to test community response. She wasn't the architect, she was the experiment. Behind me, a door slammed. Footsteps echoed. Mr. Khan, a man's voice said evenly, "I hoped you'd find this place." I turned. Tall, tailored suit. Calm eyes, the kind of calm that's paid for. "Riley," I said. He smiled like we were old friends. "You've caused quite the stir." The program was weeks from national rollout. "You built this to spy on families." He tilted his head. "To study them. Security is data, and data is currency." I gestured toward the screens. "You call that currency? Those are children's rooms. Front yards. Private lives." He sighed. "You don't understand the scale. These neighborhoods volunteer when they sign their covenants. The fine print authorizes safety monitoring. You hit it in paperwork." He shrugged. "Everyone clicks agree." I lifted my phone. "Then they'll see what they agreed to." He nodded toward the ceiling. "Already jamming your signal. You're not leaving with that footage." I smiled. Good thing it already backed up. For the first time, his composure cracked. "You're bluffing." I wasn't. The camera's memory streamed directly to my cloud server the moment I entered. Outside, faint sirens cut through the fog, Officer Chen's cruiser leading a convoy. I'd sent him coordinates before leaving. Riley heard them too. He moved fast, reaching for the keyboard, smashing keys. Data windows blinked out one by one. I grabbed his wrist. "You think erasing files erases guilt?" He twisted free, eyes sharp. "You can't stop progress, Mr. Khan. You'll only delay it." "Then I'll make the delay hurt." Doors burst open, police flooded in. Chin shouted, "Hands where I can see them." Riley froze, jaw tight, then raised his hands. "I want counsel." "Good," Chin said. "You'll need one." While officers secured the room, I stepped back to the console. The monitor still displayed the final line of a system log, upload scheduled. Phase 2, National Integration ETA. 72 hours they weren't just watching Cedar Ridge. They had dozens of neighborhoods waiting to activate. I printed the log to a flash drive and pocketed it. Evidence. Outside, reporters were already gathering beyond the barricade, chasing rumors of federal surveillance in suburban HOA programs. I stood under the warehouse awning, rain misting against my face, feeling both victory and exhaustion. Chin joined me. "You realize this doesn't end here," he said. Companies like this rebrand every year. I know. What are you going to do? Tell people the truth before they forget to ask for it. That evening, Maya sat beside me on the couch, blanket around her shoulders. She looked small but steady. Is it over? She asked. Not yet, I said. But the people who tried to scare us, they're scared now. She thought for a moment. Good. Maybe they'll learn something. I smiled. Maybe we all will. Before midnight, I uploaded the footage and documents to every major news outlet I could reach. I didn't hide behind pseudonyms. I signed it with my full name because fear grows in silence, and I was done being quiet. The next morning's headline read, Neighborhood Spying Program Exposed, Whistleblower Father Reveals Illegal Data Collection. Karen's photo appeared beside Riley's, both under arrest. The board resigned within a week. The HOA dissolved the month after. But for me, justice wasn't the trial. It was walking past that porch swing and hearing it creak again while Maya read her books, unafraid. If you're hearing this now, remember something: evil rarely starts loud. It starts polite with signatures and smiles. Ask questions. Protect your home. And never let anyone convince you that control is the same as safety. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if someone tried to police your family in the name of rules? And if you believe standing up matters, hit that subscribe button so more people hear stories like this one. Because sometimes the loudest justice starts on an ordinary porch with one parent who refuses to back down. The morning after the warehouse raid, Cedar Ridge looked nothing like the peaceful suburb it used to pretend to be. News vans lined both sides of the main road. Reporters leaned over fences, snapping photos of front doors and manicured lawns that suddenly looked like evidence. On every local channel, the same headline flashed: Suburban Surveillance Scandal, HOA Presidents Under Investigation. Karen's mugshot sat beside Riley's corporate photo. The caption below read, Community Integrity Corporation Pilot Program Under Federal Review. Neighbors who once bragged about their security systems now taped over their porch sensors with duct tape. The HOA office shut down within hours, and I couldn't walk my dog without someone stopping me to whisper, You're the dad from the video, right? I didn't feel like a hero. I felt tired. At home, Maya sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the news on her tablet. They're saying she confessed, she said softly. She did, I replied. Sort of. Karen's recorded statement had gone public that morning. In it, she didn't apologize. She said she was following instructions for a demonstration. She claimed Riley promised her recognition, a leadership position in the new safety board once the program expanded. She thought she'd be rewarded for obedience. Instead, she became the face of betrayal. But what struck me wasn't her words. It was her eyes. They weren't angry anymore. They were scared. By afternoon, I met Officer Chin outside the precinct. He looked exhausted but relieved. Riley's cooperating, he said, trying to bargain. Turns out the data operation had investors overseas. Half the funding came through shell accounts. We're turning it over to federal cybercrime. Good, I said. And Karen? She's pleading down. But she's naming every board member who signed off on the deals. Some of your neighbors might face charges too. I shook my head slowly. She started a fire to prove loyalty to people who would have erased her name the moment she became inconvenient. Chin sighed. It's always like that. They sell power, not truth. That night, Maya asked, Dad, do you think she ever wanted to help people? It caught me off guard. She thought she did, I said, but somewhere along the way, she started believing rules were more important than kindness. Maya nodded quietly. I don't ever want to be like that. I smiled faintly. Then you never will. 2 days later, the federal team invited me downtown to review what they'd recovered from Riley's servers. The lead agent, a woman with calm eyes and a voice that carried the weight of too many secrets, showed me a stack of printed emails. These are internal memos, she said. Riley's company planned to expand to 63 communities by next quarter. They used HOA bylaws as contracts. People basically signed away their privacy. One email in particular froze me. From K. Abbott at communityintegritycorp.com. Subject: Demonstration results. I've proven residents respond faster to visual examples than written warnings. Fear works better than fines. My stomach twisted. Fear works better than fines. That was her real legacy. The agent closed the folder. We'll prosecute, but rebuilding trust will take longer. People won't believe they're safe just because we shut down a company. She looked at me carefully. You could help with that. Speak publicly. Tell your story. I hesitated. I'm not a speaker. She smiled. You're already being heard. 2 weeks later, the town hall was packed. Families, reporters, students, people who'd seen the headlines and wanted to know how something like this could happen in a place that called itself safe. When I stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. I'm not here to talk about laws or bylaws. I began. I'm here to talk about what happens when we forget that neighborhoods are supposed to protect each other, not control each other. I told them about the porch swing, about the first letter, about how small rules grew into fear. I told them what it felt like to see smoke rise from your own doorway and realize that silence had cost everyone something. And I told them that justice wasn't the police raid or the headlines. Justice was a little girl who could sleep again without flinching at every creak of the floor. When I finished, no one clapped right away. They just sat there thinking. Then one person stood, then another. Applause built slowly, not for me, but for the idea that maybe, just maybe, decency could still win in a world obsessed with control. After the meeting, an elderly woman approached. I used to be on Karen's committee, she said, trembling. We thought we were helping. She said we were keeping the neighborhood safe. I nodded gently. You were, until safety started looking like power. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. So was she, I said softly. Just too late. That night, I drove home past the darkened houses and saw something new. Porch lights on, curtains open. People weren't hiding anymore. It was small, but it was change. At home, Maya was asleep on the couch, a notebook open on her lap. Across the page, she'd written, When you fight back, do it so others don't have to. I smiled, closed the notebook, and whispered, You're already braver than I ever was. The following week, federal hearings began. Riley's testimony confirmed what I'd suspected. Karen was promised status, money, and immunity. In his final statement, Riley said, We underestimated one thing, the people we watched. They weren't data points. They were humans, and humans fight back. The judge didn't look moved, but I did, because that line belonged to Maya, to our porch, to everyone who'd refused to bow to fear. If you've listened this far, you already know the lesson. Control always starts with good intentions, and it ends when ordinary people remember their own power. So, tell me, what's your neighborhood like? Would you stand up if someone tried to silence you for safety? Comment your city below. Let's see how far the story reaches. And if you believe compassion beats control every time, hit subscribe, share the story, and help keep the light on for families like mine. Because justice doesn't live in headlines. It lives on porches, one truth at a time. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, in energy. You could feel the weight of every secret, every lie, sitting heavy in the air like dust that never settled. Karen sat at the defendant's table, no makeup, no smile, no clipboard. Her yellow HOA blazer, the one she used to wear like armor, had been replaced by a gray, prison-issued sweater. When she looked up and saw me sitting in the second row beside Maya, something flickered in her eyes. It wasn't hate this time. It was recognition. The judge summarized the case in a voice that sounded like stone. Mrs. Abbott, he said, you are charged with reckless endangerment, attempted arson, and conspiracy to defraud. Do you have anything to say before sentencing? For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she stood, shoulders trembling, and turned to face the courtroom. I thought I was helping, she said quietly. I thought the rules made people better, safer. But when I saw the fire, her voice cracked. When I saw that child coughing in the smoke, I realized the only thing I was protecting was my own pride. She looked at me then and at Maya beside me. I'm sorry. I can't undo what I did. But I want you to know, I saw what that company was really doing. And they didn't care about anyone, not even me. The courtroom stayed silent. Even the judge waited a beat before speaking. Apologies don't erase damage, Mrs. Abbott, but acknowledgement is the first step toward repair. He sentenced her to 8 years, reduced for cooperation with federal investigators. After the hearing, reporters swarmed. But I didn't stop for interviews. I just wanted to get Maya home. We walked down the courthouse steps together. She held my hand, something she hadn't done since she was little. Dad, she asked softly. Yeah. She really looked sorry. I nodded. She did. Do you forgive her? The question hit harder than I expected. I thought about the letters, the smoke, the fear. I thought about the nights I watched over Maya while she slept, terrified someone else might come after us. Then I thought about what Maya needed to see in me, not a man stuck in anger, but a man who could rebuild after it. Not yet, I said honestly, but I'm learning how. Maya smiled faintly. That's good enough. In the weeks that followed, the story faded from the headlines, replaced by newer scandals, louder chaos. But for Cedar Ridge, the change was permanent. The HOA was gone. The bylaws were rewritten. And for the first time in years, neighbors actually talked, not through complaint forms, but over fences, over coffee, over laughter. Someone even built a community garden where the HOA office used to stand. They named it Maya's Corner. The first time she saw the sign, she covered her mouth, speechless. I told her, sometimes beauty grows best where fire once burned. She whispered, then we're going to have a forest someday. A month later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just a single sheet of paper inside. The handwriting was unmistakable Karen's. Mr. Khan, I don't expect forgiveness. I only want you to know that I've been teaching classes in prison, conflict resolution, community ethics. I tell them about your daughter, about the porch swing, about how rules mean nothing without empathy. Maybe I'll never make it right, but I'm trying to make it better. K.A. I read it twice, then folded it away. Not as proof, as closure. That evening, Maya and I sat on the porch together. Her reading, me just listening to the sound of peace. The new swing creaked softly in rhythm with the wind. For the first time, the sound didn't make my chest tighten. It made me breathe easier. She looked up from her book and said, Dad, are you happy? I thought about it. I think I'm finally getting there. She smiled. Then so am I. We didn't need to say anything else. Because sometimes healing doesn't announce itself. It just sits beside you, quietly letting the past rest. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just our story anymore. It was a reminder. For every parent who's ever been told to stay quiet. For every child who's been made to feel small by someone hiding behind rules. For every neighborhood that forgot what community really means. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming kindness. If you're still watching, I want to ask you something real. Have you ever seen someone misuse power, even in small ways, just because they could? How did you respond? Tell me in the comments. Because stories like this one aren't just entertainment. They're a mirror. And if you believe that empathy should always win over ego, subscribe and share the story. Let's remind the world what community should look like. Because forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it builds the future. 10 years passed. The porch looked different now, new paint, new swing, but the same quiet rhythm. Cedar Ridge had rebuilt itself. No HOA boards, no bylaws printed on every door. Just people who remembered what it felt like to lose peace and swore never to let it happen again. Maya was 21 now. She still had the small mark on her arm, a reminder of that day, not a scar, but a story etched into her skin. She was studying law, majoring in civil rights. Said she wanted to make rules that protect, not punish. Every time she said that, I heard echoes of that little girl coughing on the porch, and I realized she'd already become stronger than anyone ever intended her to be. One evening, I came home to find her at the dining table surrounded by papers and her laptop. What's all this? I asked. She smiled. It's for the foundation. The foundation? She nodded. I'm starting something. The Cedar Project. It's going to offer legal and emotional support for families bullied or mistreated by community boards, housing authorities, anyone abusing small power. I stared at her for a moment, heart swelling with pride. That's a big mission, kiddo. She grinned. You always said big fires start from small sparks. I laughed softly. I was talking about barbecues. Yeah, well, she said, I'm aiming higher. Later that night, I sat on the porch alone, listening to the faint creak of the swing she'd rebuilt herself. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet you earn, not inherit. And in that silence, I thought about everyone who'd been part of the story: Karen, Officer Chun, Briggs, Riley, even the neighbors who looked away until it was almost too late. They all left something behind: lessons, warnings, and a truth I still couldn't shake. Evil doesn't always wear black. Sometimes it wears a friendly smile and hands you a clipboard. A month later, I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was older, softer, but familiar. Mr. Khan. I paused. Karen? Yes, she said quietly. I wanted to tell you, I'm being released early. I've spent the last years counseling other inmates. They asked me to speak about accountability, and I wanted to thank you for not letting me stay the same person I was. I didn't know what to say. For years, I'd rehearse what I'd tell her: anger, forgiveness, indifference. But all that came out was, I hope you do something good with your second chance. I will, she said. I already have. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Weeks later, I joined Maya at her first public event for the Cedar Project. It was held in the old community garden that bore her name, the same ground where fear had once taken root. Now, flowers bloomed where fires had burned. She stood at the podium, hands steady, voice clear. My father taught me something when I was little, she said to the crowd. He said courage isn't about fighting wars, it's about standing up when the whole world tells you to sit down. We can't erase what happened here, but we can make sure it never happens again. The audience went silent, then erupted in applause. Some were crying, others just nodded, the way people do when truth finally lands. And I stood there, watching her speak, realizing the story had come full circle, from fear to fire, from smoke to sunlight, from silence to strength. That night, as we packed up, Maya handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo, the porch swing, freshly painted white, with a plaque attached under the beam. It read, "For every family that fought to be heard. For every child who taught us courage. For Dad, who never stopped swinging." I looked at her, trying to blink away the tears. You're going to change the world, you know that? She smiled softly. Only because you showed me it was worth saving. If you're still here, listening to this story, remember this: rules don't build communities. People do. And sometimes, the loudest justice doesn't come from the courtroom or the news. It comes from ordinary families who say, enough. So, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Comment your city below, because I want to see how far this message travels. If you believe that empathy is stronger than authority, if you believe forgiveness is more powerful than fear, if you believe every parent has the right to protect their child, then share the story, because someone out there needs to hear it. And before you go, hit that subscribe button, not for me, but for every person who's ever stood up against silence. Because when good people speak, even the loudest evil goes quiet.